Hey guys, Danny Johnson here, and today's video it might be kind of some fun, but we're going to talk about all the gold that you might be missing out on if you go to a salvage yard. And so whenever I go into a salvage yard, I'm frantically looking around, and I get a headache because I'm excited to see all the different cars, what trim levels they are, try to figure out what they were, and I find myself looking around quite a bit, and then something jumps right out at me like a special low production piece that I should be taking and getting, and so it's kind of what we're going to talk about today. So the first thing you want to look for are any aftermarket parts that somebody else might want on their car that you could resell, or something for yourself. So the Mach 1 chin spoiler is a huge one of those things. It's on a lot of Mustangs, and so if you find one, it's going to be pretty simple to just unbolt and take with you. A little trim piece, they probably aren't even going to charge you too much. The next thing is, headlights. They're really important, and of course, any good pair of headlights you'd most likely take anyway. But the ones you specifically want to look for are the Ford OEM ones, because they've been discontinued. And you can tell if they're original Fords by right here. You'll see the Ford logo on the corner. And so brand new sets of those are now selling for nearly $500 for the set, just because they're no longer made, and so people who want the original pieces want the original pieces, and so that's a good item for you to get. Next, we'll talk about the Mach 1, the Mach 1 Delete, and so basically that's just talking about the grill. Here's a stock grill with the honeycomb and the running horse on the inside. And, it doesn't seem like it's that big of a difference, but it actually does make quite a big difference on the car. And so if you can find the Mach 1 piece right here, take it. That's something you could either resell or use for yourself if you like the style of that. And so that's a good piece to have. Of course, any good hoods that you can find, whether it's a special hood like a Mach 1 or a Terminator hood or a saline hood or anything like that, and those are getting harder to find. Now, we're going to talk about these folding mirrors. They're actually called breakaway mirrors, and they're for export Mustangs. And it's a requirement by law for how narrow the streets are, because if you hit somebody with your mirror, it's going to likely kill them. And so they've made it a law that they have to have a form of breakaway mirror. And so Ford did a folding mirror to do that. And these sometimes they're just black if it's an actual export one, which you won't find much in the States. If it's on the Terminator, they'll be paint matched. And then there were also some special edition ones that you could find, and I'll show you some pictures here on the 40th anniversary cars in certain colors. And here's a good look at these mirrors on some of the 40th anniversary cars. And I'm not just saying any car that has the badge 40th anniversary. There were actually an anniversary model. Came out in several colors, crimson red, the black, white, and they had those paint-matched folding mirrors. So you can find them even on V6s that had that package done, as well as those big headrests. So maybe you're going to luck out and find yourself a pair. So as you're walking through, I know it's a lot to keep your mind on. It is for me, but you have to keep looking around, and then next thing you know, you're looking right at a pair of folding mirrors, and you didn't even know it. So anyway, that's a lot of fun, and we'll talk about these windshield wiper arms too. The Terminator has a specific pair if you ever come across a Terminator in a junkyard. And so here's what those look like. Here's the traditional wiper arm, is just kind of flat. It looks pretty simple, but the Terminator one on the actual wiper part has a different arm to it. It has this flap on here used to hold the windshield wipers down at higher speeds, and a lot of them were thrown away when people got new windshield wipers, but it's something to look for. Now we'll move on to Terminator parts over here too. Next, we want to look at these vents here. That's normally honeycomb, as you'll see over here on the Mach 1, but on the Terminator, those are actually horizontal lines, and they were designed to look like the heat extractors on the hood heat extractor vents. And so on the back side of that, it actually says Terminator. It's one of the only places that says Terminator, because it was just a code name for the car, but the manufacturer made a mistake, and it will actually say Terminator on the back in the molding, because they thought, okay, this is a part we're making for the Terminator. Someone mentioned that it was a Terminator, and they put it in the casting. So it's actually kind of a really cool historic piece. So here's a picture of those side scoop inlets, and you can see, sure enough, on the back side, it is actually stamped Terminator. So Really cool piece. Don't throw those away if you have a Terminator and you get aftermarket ones. Next, going inside the car, there's going to be quite a few things to look at. So going inside the car, of course, those door pulls are really important, especially if you can find one that does not have the broken tab at the top. So carefully try to take those out. Most likely you're going to find it's broken. These Mach tweeters are real big. And switches. I get as many switches as I can. They're easy to swap in and out. They go bad every once in a while. And door pulls, the little locks here, those are easy just to unscrew counterclockwise, and especially if you can find the silver interior upgrade package ones like this, as well as any other kind of gauges that are special like the Mach 1 or Cobra gauges. And the steering wheel, they usually won't let you take the airbag, but if you can get away with walking out of there with a good steering wheel, they're hard to find as they're wearing out. The vents are also cracking pretty easily on these cars. It's a good piece to have. And even the gauge needles, if you find a cluster that's broken open and I've found a lot of them, I've taken the needles out. Now the center console here, the trim piece, this one's silver. It's called the Interior Upgrade Package, or IUP, that came on the 03, 04 Mach 1s and some of the 2004 40th IUP cars. They're really good to have. It's a nice upgrade, and those pieces anyway are good because a lot of people paint them. I'd grab one of those cups too, the little plastic or rubber cups for the thing, as well as visors. Visors are really easy to take off, and they fade really bad. So if you can find a good set of visors, grab those. And these headrests, these are called IUP, or Interior Upgrade Package headrests, that were found on the Cobras, the Bullits, and some of the IUP cars for 2004. And so, any good pair of seat or headrests that you can get, those are usually a really nice piece to have. Also a good one to flip. And then these armrests are getting pretty worn out, as you may have seen in my last video. So that, along with the whole center console, I mean, basically we're just saying grab all the pieces out of the interior that you can. But there's certain ones here that are more important than others, like these pedals, if you can find the aluminum ones. It's really hard to get some of these out without breaking them, by the way. So I have some videos on some of that to help out. Next, we're going to talk about the export taillights, which you would find on the 99 and 01 Cobras, or anybody who's put them into theirs. These also came on the 2000 Cobra R. Very unlikely you'll find one of those in a junkyard. But anyway, if you can get those, make sure you take the whole entire harness with you. You don't want just the taillight if you can help it. Grab the harnesses because they're specific to the Cobra. And that goes with just about anything in the junkyard. You want to just grab everything that you can, in its entirety. No one's going to use a lot of the harnesses, so just take the whole thing. And of course, the shift knob's really easy to take off and grab those. But something I want to draw your attention to, as well as this whole, center section here, the bezel for the shifter boot, is in behind the actual shifter bezel. There's these little 8mm bolts for the radio, and those are usually kind of gone, or it's actually for the console area. But anytime you can grab any factory hardware, get it. I grabbed the little bolts from inside there, the little rubber boot that's under the shifter, bolts for the seats. Ford uses really good hardware. Manufacturers have to use good hardware for safety and for longevity and everything. So as many screws that you can get them. And a lot of times they don't even charge you much, or sometimes they let you take them for free. Now switches are a huge thing, kind of like the door switches, but especially on these ones, you got these three, including that middle one that says track off for the traction control. And the reason I bring this up is because most of them will say track off. However, in 2001 and some of the 2002s, there's a wheel spin logo, and I'm going to show you that. Now, these switches, I'd pull out as many as you can when you have the opportunity, because they are useful. A lot of people are looking for them, and you can use them for other things. And I'd even go a few inches back and just take the whole thing in case you have to rewire something up, or you want to wire it into a different accessory like a line lock or something that you're using. And so, anyway, getting back to the traction control thing, you'll see that it says track off for the traction control. When you hit the button, the light comes on to let you know the traction control's off. Now, in 2001 and some of the 2002s, they had this wheel spin logo, which is the same logo that appears on the dash when you, if you're spinning your tires, it'll light up green, letting you know that you got wheel spin, and it'll cut your throttle from you. But these are kind of fun to collect because they're just not that common to see. And so I've tried to get them every time that I can. And so I think it's a fun thing to collect, and some people might want them. Sometimes you can find them on eBay cheap, just the same price as the other ones. And there's some money to be made. You can usually sell them for about 15, 20 bucks. But anyway, the other switches too, like these fog light switches out of the 94 to 98, they're also good to have, because even though the 04s, 01 through 04 console is different, it has the 3 switches in the front. You can still use those where your coin slot is if you wanted to install like a line lock or something. You can use that as the switch. And so I've had some ideas to do something like that, or relocate one of the switches from the console down. And if you look at the bezel too that goes around the gauges, 94 through basically 2000 even had a switch for the defrost that was below the headlight switch. And so that's important, because if you want to put this switch in place, you put the other bezel in, and then you have a place for this switch to mount up if you want to use that for like a line lock or something. Now I want to talk a little bit about the factory speakers, because a regular 6x9 replacement like this one is not going to hit the same as a Mach one if you have the Mach 460 or the Mach audio system. And the reason why is because the Mach speakers are more of a subwoofer. They're thicker, and they'll have that Z printed on the back, and that's how you know if you're getting the right one. So you want to get these out of the doors. You want to get them just like this. It's just a little vent cover here on the top. It actually isn't the speaker. But on the bottom side, it's the Mach tray, and you can get the little tweeters out of it, and you can get the speakers, and sometimes just walk away with the whole tray. But that's another thing that you're going to want to get. As well as wings. The rear wings are really important now. I had to look pretty hard for mine, because it's easier to find one that's already painted factory color. And as they're fading, they fade pretty often. It's sometimes easier just to get a whole new wing and sell it to someone else, or just have it for yourself. Okay, something I always overlook too that's very simple, and I always regret it, is factory lug nuts. You want to grab those because they're different for different wheels, and sometimes you put a new set of wheels on your car and they don't work. And these are acorn style, they're really nice, but these particular ones are not my factory ones. And the size is different for the socket. It's the right thread, different socket. So obviously you also want to just grab whatever you can find. Fenders, Ford fenders are really important. A lot of people look for the Ford logo on those. And door pulls, we'll talk about these a little bit. We kind of covered it a little bit, but they have, on the inside of them, you can feel like a little bit of a lip. And let me show you here. Down in here, you'll feel it right here. Next time you're getting into your car, feel that lip, and you'll notice that some of the aftermarket ones don't have that. It's just flat and really awkward when you're trying to pull the door closed. So factory door pulls, definitely. Usually the passenger side one is good and the driver's side's broken. Now maybe you're just going in with basic hand tools, but if you can get the whole entire solid rear axle, make sure it's a GT so that you have the traction lock. The V6 was the open-end differential 7.5, so you want to make sure you're getting it out of a GT or a Mach 1 or a Cobra, and that way you get the 28 spline. It's not the best, but you at least get the solid rear axle with the 8.8. And of course, speaking about solid rears, there are some differences. The 94 to 98 rear axle is actually a little bit shorter in width than the 99 to 04. They're both compatible. You can put them up to either car, but they will stick in or out a little bit for the shorter one. And of course, a Cobra IRS, if you see any Cobra, whether it's the 99, the 2001, or the 304, I'd try to walk away with the entire independent rear suspension. You can usually part that out pretty good. And if you see a Cobra, very unlikely. You got the third LED brake light. Those are running $200 now. They're pretty expensive. So there's a lot of parts that you can buy, and of course, any door panels that are in good shape and not dinged up. You can see I even have a spare one over here that I'll show you here in a sec. It's worth having because you get the window motors in there, you get the door lock actuator, the glass, the handle. I mean, there's so many good parts on a door that you might overlook. Now, the rocker panels, which is the body molding below the doors here, you know, it's actually really important. A lot of people will chip these up running over stuff and, you know, cracking them. So the Cobra even has flat ones that are more desirable and harder to find. And then the Bullitt has the same one, but it actually even has a little mud flap on the front of it, and those always get broken on speed bumps, so if you ever find one of those. As well, underneath the passenger kick panel, grab whatever computer you can, because you know, people burn up computers, and it's harder and harder to find replacement ones. So that's another huge thing that you could grab that's really not going to be that hard to do. As well as this one, it's called the fuel pump driver module, the fpdm, and it's the same for pretty much all the Mustangs, and it's right on the inside of the trunk here behind the carpet. And I can put a link in the description showing, you know, how to access this, or at least how to get to it. But anyway, that's another great thing that you can grab. And speaking of modules, there's the constant control relay module, the CCRM, and I'll put a link in the video description about this one, but it's under here in the passenger fender. I conveniently have the fender well lining out so I can show you. But that basically has some relays in it for the air conditioning and you know, a lot of them to help the car run properly. So, but anyway, these are just some of the things I look for. Badges are good. You know, the side skirts for the Cobra is an important one there too. They're specific. But anyway, I'll put a link in the description on some of the other parts that make certain cars like the Mach 1 and the Terminator. But these are some of the things I look for when I go into the junkyard. Go ahead and put in the comments what you think. I know there's a lot of parts that you might be specifically looking for when you go, and so share that in the comments for other people so that they can look for them as they go to the salvage yard as well. Thanks for watching.